So generally once during each retreat, I try to, how can I say, give a talk that's really aimed exclusively, it's really for anybody that wants to awaken. That's a simple way to put it. So if it's interesting to you, this is the one to listen to. I hope it's worthwhile listening to. We'll both find out that together, but probably the most useful place to start is to get the orientation straight, because if you don't get the orientation straight, you can literally sort of spin your wheels for years, and a lot of those years will be spent in a kind of spiritual frustration. By the orientation, I mean, when we're looking at these, as I said earlier, I think there's these two fundamental existential issues of life, right? Who am I and how do I live? And as far as the first one, the who am I part, it's so important to be oriented into the always and already, not oriented towards what may happen or come at some point in time later. You know, that when you're sort of sitting around waiting, hoping to have one of these big event experiences you've read about or heard about or any such thing, you know, when you're doing that, you're literally pushing away reality. You're literally pushing away your conscious acknowledgement of your own true nature, because your own true nature has nothing to do with what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next year or the next month. It's rooted completely in the always and already. What you are is always and already what you are. You never, ever, 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 ever will or can become what you are. There's a lot of becoming in life. In fact, most of life is becoming, right? You're born, you grow up, you change, you evolve. That's a whole segment of an aspect of life and being that we're all very, very familiar with, the whole realm of becoming. But in terms of realization, at least initial realization, we have to step out of the world of becoming in all of its guises. Because the seeking impulse or the yearning impulse needs to be oriented towards the always and already. If it's oriented towards what might happen at some other point in time, or it's oriented towards when my experience that's now happening changes in some way, then that's going to mean something significant. But in terms of awakening, that's not actually true. All those are the ways we sort of deceive and confuse ourselves from recognizing the always and already. Because, of course, reality is a big word. It's hard to know what other word to use, but reality being reality has to always and already be. There's no point that reality comes and goes, okay, now I'll start being reality, right? Now I'll start. You know, yesterday was just nothing but delusion, but now I'll start being reality. Reality never starts being reality, right? There's no moment where it goes, okay, now it all starts. I'm saying these things just to sort of counter the seeking energy that gets mobilized and oriented in sort of the wrong direction. And I know all about it because I did it myself. And then I watched people doing it for 22 years now. So I did it myself until I didn't. So you'll hear me, and those of you, most all of you have heard me, have been exposed to my teaching for a while, if not a long time. And you know I'm often orienting things into the always and already, using different terminology at different times. But basically, so when we start to orient our attention towards the always and already, we are letting go of anticipating anything in the world of experience. Now, we do call it the direct, we call things like awakening and realization sort of the direct experience. But strictly speaking, we're not actually talking about a experience direct or indirect. That's a sort of teaching strategy to tell people, like, get out of your mind, get oriented more towards in the direction of experience, not in the direction of figuring it all out. That's not going to help you. So reorient toward experience. So it's a strategic maneuver, right? But it's important to understand that you're not sitting there waiting for a particular experience to come along, right? An experience that will say, okay, now this experience is reality, unlike all the other experiences, whatever they were. That's not going to happen. You may have experiences where you feel that way. It's one of the things, if you sit around doing nothing for long enough, we call it meditating, occasionally you can get some pretty wild experiences. And you can get some experiences that are about the best experiences. Well, they're beyond what you can even imagine. They're so good. And whenever we have an overwhelmingly positive experience, we almost immediately assume that it is reality. Why is it reality? Because it feels so damn good, So it's one of the sort of the tricky parts about spirituality is you do have some pretty cool experiences now and then. And awakening certainly has experiential byproducts that happen. But in and of itself, like I was saying yesterday, when we're looking into our true nature, so of course our true nature must be present always and already, right? There's no point in which we become who we really are. That just is illogic insanity. When am I going to become who I am? What could that even mean, right? It actually means nothing. So I'm all saying this because this is that's to sort of start to root attention into this old spiritual cliche called the present moment. But what the hell does that mean, the present moment? It's a way of saying don't look outside of what's presently occurring. That's what it means to be in the present moment. Don't look outside of what's presently occurring right now. Look into the nature of what's presently occurring. That's the shift. You're actually looking deeply into what is presently happening, not into what could be happening. So that's a real let go for the sort of the spiritual ego, you might say, it's sitting around like a baby bird with his mouth open, hoping that God drops enlightenment into his mouth. Right? I'm waiting. We've done all the right things, I think. So we just have to see that tendency because, at certain points along the way, it's just part of how we're hooked up, right? We're hooked up around pleasurable, nice experiences and anticipating and, all that stuff. There's a part of us that's hooked up that way, which leads to sorrow.